The first time it happened, I didn't even realize it meant something. I still remember the warm Saturday afternoon in late spring, the kind of day when sunlight spills through the windows and makes everything feel calm and harmless. My mom had invited a few friends over, like she often did, filling the house with the scent of coffee, cinnamon pastries, and the soft hum of adult laughter. I had just come back from a long shift at the local grocery store in a quiet neighborhood outside Columbus, Ohio. My shoulders ached, my mind was foggy, and all I wanted was to sneak upstairs and sleep. But that's when I noticed her. My mom's friend, Rebecca Carter, was standing near the kitchen island, stirring her coffee slowly while talking with the others. She had always been around growing up, one of those familiar adults who appear at birthdays, barbecues, and holiday dinners. She was the kind of person who always smiled warmly, asked how school was going, and treated you like you were still 10 years old. But that afternoon felt different. When I walked past the kitchen, she looked at me for a moment longer than usual. Her smile didn't feel casual. It felt thoughtful, almost like she was seeing me for the first time. Before we go any further, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and stories that remind us how unexpected moments can change our lives, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who believes in compassion, comment where you're watching from, and subscribe to the channel for more emotional stories like this. I nodded politely and tried to keep walking toward the stairs, but Rebecca called my name softly. Her voice carried that same friendly tone she'd always used, yet something about it made me stop. She asked simple questions: how work was going, whether I had started thinking about college again, whether I was still playing guitar. Nothing unusual. But the way she listened made the conversation feel heavier, more personal, like she truly cared about the answers. At the time, my life felt like it was quietly falling apart. A year earlier, my dad had moved across the country after the divorce. College plans had collapsed because I couldn't afford tuition anymore. Most of my friends had left town for universities or new jobs. Meanwhile, I stayed behind, stacking shelves at a grocery store and pretending I wasn't slowly losing direction. I didn't talk about those things much, not even with my mom. But somehow Rebecca noticed. As the conversation ended, she laughed gently at something I said and reached out to grab my wrist in a casual, almost playful way. Then she picked up a pen from the counter and scribbled something across the back of my hand. At first, I thought it was a joke. But when she stepped away, I looked down and saw 10 numbers written in neat blue ink, her phone number. She leaned closer for just a second and said quietly that if I ever needed someone to talk to, I should call. Then she walked back to the kitchen like nothing had happened. I stood there staring at my hand, confused. At 19 years old, I didn't know what to think. Part of me assumed she was just being nice. Adults sometimes gave out their numbers for help, advice, or support. But another part of me felt uneasy, like there was something hidden behind the gesture that I didn't fully understand. So I washed the ink off my hand before dinner and tried to forget about it. Weeks passed. Summer slowly took over the city, bringing humid nights and long shifts at the store. Life kept moving in that dull, repetitive rhythm that happens when you're young but feel stuck. Then one evening, something happened that changed everything. My car broke down on a dark road outside town. It was nearly midnight, and my phone battery had just died. The road was quiet, surrounded by empty fields and distant highway lights. I sat there behind the wheel, staring at the steering wheel, feeling that familiar weight of frustration pressing down on me. That was when I remembered the number. Not on my hand, but in my mind. For some reason I had memorized it the moment she wrote it. I don't know why. Maybe because it felt strange. Maybe because something about that moment stayed with me longer than I expected. There was a small gas station half a mile away, so I walked there and borrowed their phone. My hands were shaking slightly as I dialed. Part of me expected her not to answer, but she did. Her voice sounded calm, almost like she had been expecting the call all along. 20 minutes later, Rebecca's car pulled into the parking lot. She stepped out wearing a simple gray sweater, her hair tied loosely behind her head, looking more tired than the confident woman I usually saw at my mom's house. She didn't ask many questions. She simply helped arrange a tow truck and waited with me while it arrived. The strange thing was how easy it felt to talk to her. We sat on the curb under the yellow glow of the station lights, and for the first time in months, I told someone how lost I felt. I told her about the fear of wasting my life, about feeling like everyone else was moving forward while I stood still. She didn't interrupt, she didn't judge, she just listened. And when I finished, she told me something that stayed with me forever. She said that sometimes people step into our lives not because they have the answers, but because they can see the parts of us that we've forgotten ourselves. That night became the first of many long conversations. Over the next few months, Rebecca and I talked often. Sometimes on the phone, sometimes over coffee in small diners across town. Our conversations were never romantic, never inappropriate. They were simply real. She told me about her own mistakes, dropping out of college when she was younger, rebuilding her career after losing everything in her late 20s, learning how to forgive herself for choices she regretted. For the first time, I realized adulthood wasn't a straight road. It was messy, broken, full of detours, but still possible. Slowly, things started changing. Rebecca encouraged me to apply for night classes at a community college nearby. She helped me practice interview questions for a better job. She even pushed me to start playing guitar again at a small open mic night downtown. Little by little, the life that once felt stuck began to move again. I found a better job at an electronics store. I enrolled in 2 evening classes, and for the first time in years, I felt hopeful about my future. But the biggest surprise came during Thanksgiving dinner later that year. Our families had gathered around the table, the house filled with laughter and the smell of roasted turkey. At one point during the evening, my mom pulled Rebecca aside and hugged her tightly. I overheard part of their conversation. My mom thanked her for helping me. Rebecca smiled softly and said something I'll never forget. She said she had noticed the sadness in my eyes months earlier, the day she wrote that number on my hand. She said she recognized that same lost expression because she had worn it herself once, long ago. In that moment, everything finally made sense. It had never been about anything inappropriate. It had been about compassion, about one human being quietly reaching out to another who looked like he was drowning in silence. Years have passed since that afternoon in the kitchen. Today, I'm 27 years old, working as a graphic designer in Chicago, building the kind of life I once believed was impossible. My mom still laughs about how Rebecca somehow became one of the most important mentors in my life. And sometimes I still think back to that simple moment. A pen, a hand, 10 numbers written in blue ink, a gesture so small that it could have meant nothing, but instead changed everything. Before we reach the end of this story, I want to ask something special. If you've ever had someone show you kindness when you needed it most, even if it was just a small gesture, please write the word kindness in the comments. I read every comment, and your stories help keep this community alive, because the truth is, we never know when a tiny act of compassion might save someone from feeling invisible. And if this story touched your heart, reminded you of someone who believed in you, or gave you hope during a difficult time, please take a moment to like the video, share it with someone who might need encouragement today, comment your thoughts, and subscribe for more emotional stories like this. Sometimes the smallest moments become the turning points of our lives, and sometimes all it takes is a number written on your hand.